I'm here with Sam Valenti, owner and founder of Ghostly International, a record label amongst many other things that was founded here in Ann Arbor, University of Michigan in 1999, shortly after a meeting between ourselves. For transparency, I was one of the founding artists on the label after a meeting that Sam and I had here in Ann Arbor. So thank you for being here, and thanks for sharing your journey with us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, so it started here.
Yes.
In Ann Arbor.
Yep.
You and I met at an event. Mm-hmm. I was playing music live.
Yep.
In a house. Mm-hmm. And you saw it.
I did. I was in the basement.
You liked what you saw a little bit, and we got together after that, had some coffee on State Street.
Yeah.
And
that's true. I got your number, I think. I asked for your phone number.
Which was my dorm number.
That's true.
At the time.
That's true. Yep. I think the idea was, I knew I wanted to do a label, but I didn't know who to do it with. And there was people that we knew in common, or would know in common, named like Dave Shaman.
Yeah.
Our friend who passed away.
Disco D.
Who had already put out records. And I think putting out records at the time, before digital, was like pressing a vinyl 12-inch single. That was like, so you could do that, you had a label. And he had done it, and it was like, I knew I wanted to do it. You were wanting to put music out, our interests aligned, and we were like, okay, how do we do this?
When you were here at University of Michigan, you were studying art history, right?
Yeah, I was studying. I didn't know that until later. I came as an undefined, LS&A kid. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think I knew I wanted to do a label. That was like in my letter to the school, like, which just seems kind of weird. I didn't even know that existed.
My letter to the school was very weird as well.
Really?
I asked for a transcript of it, which I could not get.
Nice.
Because basically it was about how I wanted to be a musician.
That's amazing. So we both knew what we wanted to do, but maybe didn't know how to get there. And I think that's kind of the fun of our friendship and relationship and partnership. Uh-huh. Is like we've needed to meet each other and also other people in our orbit. And that's what's so great about Ann Arbor and the university is that I think we were able to cobble together photographers, designers, musicians, engineers, all within the university or the town.
Absolutely.
And that's the DNA. I think to me, the original Ghostly ethos was not just about our thing, but it was, can you make something original from using your friends, mm-hmm. Building a creative community with just your people.
And to this day, it's still that way.
Yeah.
It's such a hub. Mm-hmm. Doing the lecturing here now at SMTD, I've seen from an outside perspective the system at work and the connections that students are having, mm-hmm. Amongst my class and also just within the system. Not only the university, but the town, mm-hmm. and utilizing venue space, working with community members, which I think we also learned how to do early on as well, mm-hmm. whether it would be residencies at the Blind Pig or the Necto. Mm-hmm. Ann Arbor's always had a great relationship, a symbiotic relationship, whether it be sports, arts, creativity. The town is very much a part of the system of University of Michigan and vice versa.
Awesome.
And I think that's a great way to start with us. We were here in Ann Arbor. Mm-hmm. We had a fax machine in a closet of an apartment. Yeah. You taught me how to DJ at your dorm.
You were already making music and performing it. I was DJing as like a house party. I DJ'd my school dances in high school, mm-hmm. and house parties and stuff, and then brought my turntables to my dorm room at Cousins.
Yeah.
And as we became friends after meeting you, playing music live, we got your number. We hung out at Amir's Deli on State Street at the time, and you'd come over to my dorm. We'd DJ. I didn't teach you. You just kind of learned on my. I helped, but you and I think we both knew the direction was going towards putting music out and building a thing, but it was very organic. It wasn't. I don't think either of us knew it would be our jobs. Maybe you did, but I just this is just what we like doing.
Totally.
You were anthropology.
Yep.
I had yet to pick a major, but I was taking all sorts of classes, which I loved about being at school here, and the ability to. Both of us came from a musical mindset. I think you realized we were going to the same raves at old warehouses in Detroit in high school, and you even remember seeing me. So like exploring music as space, exploring music as community, finding your community through music. I feel like that's kind of like a big part of our life, and as you have done with your career, and especially here at school, music is like the bonding agent. That's the number one aspect of both of our lives, I feel like.
I could sit here and listen to you recall the beginning. It's so nice, you have a good grasp of like how we met and where we met. And it's all true. I think, just for setting the record straight, I think there's a lot of what I have done as a musician that was aided and I don't say formatted, but the template had been made very easy to interact with because of you and the labels.
It was built all real time. I think we were trying to figure out where we fit in to the space, which at the time was dance music, DJ culture. Obviously, Detroit has a brilliant history in the Midwest. The I-94, Chicago, Detroit, house techno. You and I were going to those parties. We knew that you were making music, going to be DJing, and like, how do we find our way into the space in a way that was authentic? And I think by performing, by putting out records, you enter the continuum. I think like participant culture, I like that word a lot. And I think, I think I was going to release music, and I realized it wasn't my like passion. And watching you,
which is a very big decision to make. Right. As a young person, when you decided to make the switch from, okay, I'm going to either be a performing artist or I'm going to be someone who can bring other performing artists together. Right. I guess what was like, can you recall moments, like really specific moments that helped you form the label that, how do you start a label? Like living in a dorm, living at any university, as a sophomore, like how do you start a record label, or how did you do it then?
I think it's funny. I think there's actually a lot of commonality. I think just putting music into the world is a form of having a label, right? Whether it's Bandcamp or uploading it to digital service providers, whatever. And then because this is right when we got to college, with high speed in our dorms was one of the first years. Napster and piracy, that was a revelation, right? Because obviously it changed the industry. Some ways bad at the time, but also it opened up in a sort of pre-social network sense. You could look into someone's folder of the music they had and immediately sense a commonality.
Totally.
The way now that if you look at Instagram, who do they follow? Who do they like, right? And so I think that's the like flashpoint where we were living in the past, old records, turntables, carrying speakers around, which you've done a lot of. How do you get... Also participant culture, like we were talking about. How do you become part of something? I think everyone thinks about how do you become the artist, but you were throwing parties, we were throwing parties, we were meeting other people, trying to create moments, which I think is a big part of music. It's a collaborative thing. It's a dialogue between sound engineering, performance artist, and fans. And so I remember flyering with you all the time with our friends around town. That's a participant thing. And I think it's lost. Obviously, it's been changed a lot with social and digital stuff, but it's the same impulse. How do you create energy around art? And I think the fundamentals are the same. It's like
just the mediums have changed.
Exactly. Finding people you like and connect with is like the first job, I think.
Yeah. Now that you say that, there's really not a big difference between a telephone pole covered in staples and old remnants of posters than a Facebook wall, like with just loads of information on it.
They're both ephemeral.
And they're both going to be like pretty much forgotten the next day.
Right.
But it's the necessary.
But the act of putting yourself out there.
At least now we're not killing a lot of trees, like putting up all the paper.
We're killing trees in other ways.
We're killing trees in other ways.
Yeah. 100%. But it's a way of, by you and I and our friends, we had enough faith that we wanted to put the message out, which I think is what a label is.
Let's talk about the friends. Let's talk about the next step. So you've set up a label. You've gone through, the X, Y's, and Z's of how to start a business. We
didn't know what we were doing. We were just.
But you set up an LLC, or you set up
you set up the basics.
In
10 minutes.
So so you did a lot of things that are rudimentary, like basic 101 of how to start a business. You went to London to master our first record.
I studied abroad, and I at the time, dance music culture was very prominent in London and Berlin. And
how did you just get your feet in certain doors? And I love the idea of, is it just doing it? Like, is that the trick is just to do it, or just to say, I want to do this? Who do I talk to?
I think part of it's finding out who knows, right? Like my first thing at college was that there was a little newspaper called the Michigan Independent at the time. I was a student run. It was probably like 1,000 copies made. I don't even know. And I was going to do CBN. I thought about it. I did a demo tape for CBN.
WCBN, yeah.
I listened, and I still love the station. I listened to my tape like 10 years ago, and I never turned it in because I didn't like how I sounded, and I just didn't have I didn't have that. I like a lot of kids. College radio is an awesome way to get involved.
100%.
I just didn't have that instinct or ability. I interviewed our friend Dave Shaman, who was one of our mentors and heroes, and I was like, this is a guy who's not even 21 and is playing clubs, playing the Blind Pig. He had put out a record, was DJing in Chicago and other places.
And attending the university.
And being a great student. So I was like, I'm going to talk to that person. So I interviewed him on a little micro cassette at a pizza shop on the corner of like Liberty and I forget, or State and...
Had you met him before that, or was that the...
I had not met him. I don't know how I got up to him, but I was like, let's meet for pizza. I want to interview you about your career.
Cool.
And and then we became friends through that, right? And same with me bothering you at the party.
Yeah. And doing that at the time was probably as nerve-wracking as trying to get an interview with, a celebrity.
Right.
So you had to break through that fear boundary.
Yeah. I'm more of an introvert probably than by nature.
Yeah.
But I knew to get to where I wanted to go, I had to kind of break my own fear, which I think all artists have to do to some degree.
Yep.
And I just like, okay, I'm not going to learn anything if I don't talk to these people.
Yeah.
And became friends with naturally.
So I think that's a catalyst moment.
Yeah.
I think for any entry point, you have to break through that fear, that block. The WCBN, you didn't break through that block.
No.
And I'm not saying you had to.
It may have changed it may have been great for me, but I just, at the time, I didn't have the confidence.
It may have derailed you from doing other things as well. So that's fascinating to know. You had to use other services like the Michigan Independent. And I'm not saying you were aware of this at the time, but in retrospect, you used your position there to get an interview with someone you really respected that was doing something that you had an idea.
It was a blog.
I want to do something like that.
It was a pre-blog blog. It was a nothing little thing, but it was a chance to put something in print, meet someone, transcribe it,
put yourself out there,
and became and luckily became friends. And I think that a lot of the community that you and I built in our school days, we still are friends with those people. We still work with those people. It was you being like, hey, I met this guy in my housing.
I put up a sign at a local record store.
Yeah.
With a little take number thing.
Amazing.
And it said, it was at Grooveyard, old record store.
Yeah.
And it said, call me. I make electronic music, and I want to make electronic music. If there's anybody here that does that, and I knew it was a DJ store. So sure enough, 2 guys called me that lived in East Quad.
Wow.
And I took over. I had my Korg.
I didn't know this story.
Yeah. That's crazy. I never told you.
And
I didn't know the Dave story. So that's good that we're getting to places that we. After all these years, we're actually talking to each other for the first time.
Right.
It was Chris and Paul, and I showed up there, some Traverse City guys, and we set up in a little rec room at East Quad, and they brought their sampler, and I had I think the ASRX, and we just jammed for a little bit, talked about Plastic Man and Detroit records and techno, and then I ended up DJing their party at Church on Church, which Will Calcutt was DJing in a frog costume for Halloween.
Amazing.
And Will Calcutt became the designer of my first 3 albums.
Yeah.
Amongst
and the photographer of a lot of the early shows, and it's still one of our closest friends.
Yeah. And so you and I think met Will at that party on Church Street.
And I love that about college, about Michigan, a little bit about music culture is you kind of Lego assemble each other and find your place.
I think Dave played that event as well.
Probably.
Dave Shaman. So that right there is a direct result of you putting yourself out there in an uncomfortable position, breaking through the nerves of talking to somebody that you really respected. Me going out on a leg and just, or going out and putting my number out there brought Dave, you, Will, myself together, which then we can segue into the next part of, I guess, the label. So that was the beginning. That was us getting started. We're here in Ann Arbor. Things pick up. Things take off. We start getting...
We put our first record out in summer of 99.
Yep.
Pressed 500 vinyl, drove them around to record stores, sold them to the store. Not the best financial thing, but it got the ball rolling. People would play it. It also is the beacon that got the boomerang going, because our friends Todd Osborne and Tad Molinix, who we still are friends with and work with, Todd had a record store. Tad worked there.
He had a great WCBN show, right?
Yep. And that got, I think, knowing that the label existed, Tad Molinix sent us his music, which set up another iteration of the label too. So once the boomerang goes, people start to, once the flame is lit, attracts people. So I think the synergy point is by communicating, you create commonality and other relationships. If we hadn't put that into the world, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. It was just the best we could do at the time. But it created the momentum that got other people involved.
And likewise, Todd and Tad they were doing their boomerangs.
Too.
So, like I said, Todd had the WCBN show, the record store.
They had put out a record.
Totally. They had been putting out stuff. And it seems like these multiple spinning objects in motion started helping each other. And coalescing in certain ways. They don't drop their thing. They just help and do with us a little bit, and then vice versa.
Cool.
So we're out there. We put ourselves out there.
Right.
We're getting traction, or the label is getting traction. Press is good. What are some of the early challenges that you faced, I guess, as a business owner, as a record label starter? Like, what are some things that you noticed right away that you kind of realized, okay, these are going to be hurdles, or these are going to be tricks to navigate that I need to figure this stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm trying to think about the stuff that was really meaningful. I mean, there's obviously, if you're an artist or your label, trying to get attention, right? So how do you create demand? Which is a really a challenging thing. It's it's an exercise in self awareness. Like, what do you bring to the table that people like? Obviously, it's a chemistry set, and we were able to do a lot of gigs locally and learn how to host other people, learn how to play other people's events. I remember driving with you guys to Toronto for shows. I think to me the differentiator that mattered the most was having a brand identity, which is obviously very common language now. It's everything's a brand, but it's
we'll definitely get into some of that later in our conversation, because I think that's one of your strongest elements now has been your brand diversification and learning how to incorporate other I guess the same way as artistry.
I think it starts at the beginning. Beyond the products, it was the idea that we were a group of people under this flag. So the logo is simple and catchy, and I was DJ Space Ghost, so I always had the ghost thing and would draw it, and knowing that because we were doing different kinds of music, but we wanted to identify under one umbrella. So to me, the brand and the name was the Trojan horse, so that you could book a show and say, the ghostly people are going to be there, and it meant a quality thing, or I think a lot of the stuff we grew up on. And also just Detroit culture is auto industry, logos and brand is a big part of the experience, and I think that's something you have in your own control. You don't need to pay anyone for that. You can design and propagate and build your brand through, and especially now through social media and just general aesthetics. You can create an identity. I think both for artists and for labels. We had friends who were photographers who are now big photographers. At the time, they were just kids in school with us. I remember we had them come shoot photos of you. So it's it was just 101, image building. So every time we would deliver a photo or a flyer, it was the best. Our friend Will would do the graphics, or Michael, or it's so I think part one is establishing the community and finding your people, and then how do you...
They're out there.
Yeah, they're definitely out there.
They're out there, and they also want...
They want the same thing. And learning how to delegate, I think, as a business person was the hardest thing, too. And knowing that I'm never going to be great at certain things. So, how how do you bring people in and let them help you as a musician or a label?
Yeah.
How do we collaborate? How do we build something bigger than just some of its parts? Because nowadays you can be an artist and do all your socials and do all your business and have nobody. But I do think the reason we were able to grow was that we started having staff and first friends of ours, like Lissa would come over, help us and kind of add perspective, or if we had to do a tour, like it was just like finding the other people who maybe weren't trying to be music business people, but like wanted to participate in the culture.
Yeah. That was really important.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people that, have come and gone that, like you said, they weren't necessarily there to be a musician or they weren't there to put out a release, but they wanted to support.
Yeah.
And they wanted to feel like they were part of something.
Right. And that can take a myriad shapes.
Yeah. What I've noticed with you is human connection is so important. Mm-hmm. If you're noticing that you like somebody's writing, if you like somebody's design, if you like somebody's photography, you go out and you make that connection, and you want to connect with them.
Yeah, the expression now is like give flowers while you're there to smell them, kind of thing.
Okay.
Or like show love, right? Because it's not because people need to hear that, and we all want to hear that for our own work too. Mm-hmm. And B, it's oftentimes it means that you have a connection. So it's like I constantly message people. I love this song. I love this photo. I love this. And sometimes it turns into a conversation, but it's like being a fan is a big part of being an artist or a label. Because once you lose that, I think you lose the whole premise.
Totally,
we're all fans. We all started as fans, and so that's what creates a lot of momentum. There's the putting yourself out there and saying I like this, and there's also a way to go, how do I add value to their thing, and vice versa. It's not just a one-way street.
Yeah, I mean you have created resources and avenues of connection, and you figured out ways to do it that other people don't have yet, and I think could benefit in that way.
And we were talking about this earlier, like design thinking is like a trendy thing in company culture, where like companies like Apple use design as the focus. I think what I like to innovate with you is like music thinking, which you've talked about a lot, like the grid. Mm-hmm. There's obviously rules to music.
Yes.
And like that's what gives it power, but also being able to like abstract.
There's a formula to house in dance music. It's a 4/4 beat.
Right.
A hi-hat on the up, and a clap on every 2 and 4.
It's what you do with that.
But it's what you do with that that makes it a hit or not, or a ear candy.
Right.
So
and also like how do you? I think you've done this with across mediums, and I've tried to do it in my lane too. Is music thinking is like yes, there are rules, there are the heroes of the industry and the stories, but those are also from the past. They also are maybe not relevant as much anymore. So it's like, how do you evolve on, how do you look at, music is collaboration, it's expression, it's communication. How do you use your music brain, whether it's performance or business, and not get stuck in the rules of the old way?
Yeah.
Or, well, that's just how it's done, because obviously that's not relevant anymore.
Totally.
So that's been the fun of our work together, I think, is music's always a centerpiece of everything, but we've been able to innovate and like iterate and find connections outside of music. And I often think you can get more ideas outside of your industry than from inside.
Totally. That's a really good point.
There's like perfect examples of the past, but like I want to see what fashion is doing with Instagram. I want to see but how museums are using this technology.
What do you think the percentage of followers that you follow on Instagram are musicians or
probably not that many?
Music?
Because music's also very divisive. Like, talk about music being this sort of unifier, but music taste is like the most divisive thing, right? Like, we all watch some of the same Netflix shows. It's pretty like, the overlap's pretty common. Music's actually very, very personal. That's why it's so great. Because you and I could argue vehemently about music. But unlike but most industries, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's a good movie. Unless you're like a real cinephile or whatever. Like, And so I think that's what's the power of it. It's like, how do you capture that fan energy? How do you, the great artists, I think now, like the big artists, are able to connect dots from fine art, fashion, literature, poetry. Like they're making a new spectacle. And that's where I always get excited, because there's not a ton of real musical innovation. It's all in the remix or the like reiteration.
Yeah.
You know,
I think collaboration is kind of a key point that we keep coming back to. You know, when you talk about these big conglomerates of artists, singular artists, there's usually such a big team underneath them.
Yeah.
So they're almost doing what you've done as just an artist as label, you know, or the artist is the thing that needs to be fed with all of this art, fashion, photography, you know, outsider influence. I really love thinking about back in the day. You could count, like, Cher was somebody who was on TV and was fashionably, you know, received as well as being high fashion, but also a singer.
Right.
It's like one of them 5 that was considered a multi-genre, you know, but now...
And also changed with the times and evolved and was not afraid to break.
Yeah. Madonna.
A lot
Cher.
of the, I mean, the Beatles, who I know are dear to your heart.
Yes.
Was actually a very short amount of time.
It's insane.
Right, and it's like it's almost impossible. Whereas a lot of the interesting artists, I think, are, you look at the multi-decades, either they have one shtick in a good way, like a Tony Bennett, and you just like own it, or like a Miles Davis or whatever. In his time, like or Cher even, like they have a common theme, but they like
Bowie.
Bowie, yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing about music thinking. What I think fine art and visual art is good to look at is visual artists are allowed to have a lifetime oeuvre or like theme. Like, it's about getting better through time.
Yeah.
Whereas musicians are often judged at the beginning of their career or like a late apex. Maybe you're lucky, like a Nick Cave, you get a couple moments, or Bowie. But I think music thinking is what you do, and I love how you approach everything. Is it's your approach to art is a lifetime vocation. So I know you'll never stop making music. It may be different than what you made 5 years ago, but it's the attitude, the tinkerer, and that's how I feel about what I do. It's an approach to work.
It's never done. Yeah.
It's a curiosity. It's like, what if I did this? What if I did that? And it's all, your humanity's going to come through, but the problem, I think we're very hard on musicians because we're focused on the masterpiece. But really, there's not a lot of masterpieces. Like, careers are the new masterpieces.
Boom.
And then like, how do you have a career? Whether it's you singing, I mean, you've DJed, you play live, you've sung, you've not sung, you've co-produced, you've produced, you've mixed. Like, that's an arc. And I think I always, like, if I was a musician, I would, you know, if I was talking to musicians, I'd say, and I watched it with our roster too. People become composers for films. Maybe they were focused on being in the front, now they're in the back, or vice versa. It's an arc. It's an evolution.
Yeah.
You know.
So plan on wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah, if you want to.
If you want to.
Yeah.
But you'll definitely have more opportunity for. I think let's get real about income. Let's get real about making it as an artist. Or you're surviving. You know,
your quality of life, or having a family, or not wanting to tour, or not being able to tour.
And it's more fun.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest with you, I know you're approached, whether it be digitally or, you know, on Instagram and messages, or how do you help artists these days get started, or how do you give advice to somebody who is just getting started? I know it's a pretty blanket question, so you're I don't want to paint you in a corner, but you have talked about labels and the importance of labels these days, record labels. What's the
unimportance
and the unimportance?
Yeah.
I didn't want to put the words in your mouth.
Sure.
But so what are your what do you say to a young person these days that's trying to start off?
I'm rarely ever in the conversation of what should I do to become an artist.
Okay.
I don't know because I don't. That's such a personal thing, right? So, and I also believe that art labels don't create artists or even create their success. They help if they're good, but.
So right there, what is a label good for?
An artist is on a trajectory. Okay. Who they choose to work with, managers, labels, agents, etc., will help dictate the arc of their career.
Okay.
And the self-drive. So a label's part of a complete team if you want it.
Okay.
What's cool, since you and I started, is that being able to be a self-managed, self-released artist is a very viable is more viable than ever. I'll leave it there.
Yes.
I don't there's a lot of inequality still. There's a lot of problems with the industry that are being addressed and discussed, but there has never been a better time to be a self-financed or self-created artist. You also have the ability to create leverage
at any level.
At any level, I believe.
Yeah.
And I could get into then I could be proven wrong on some conversations, but I like the fact that an artist can self-release or self-publish or whatever to a certain point, show the data to a label or a manager or whoever, and say, I have this going for me. How are you going to add value to it?
Is that kind of required these days?
I do think...
I mean, raw talent is raw talent. I'm sure if you saw somebody singing on the corner of a street...
But I'm not a talent guy. I don't even know if I know talent. Oh, okay. Like, I'm like, and I'm not saying that there is talent. I just mean, like, I'm not somebody who can go to a bar and go, that guitar player that's just not my skill.
Gotcha.
I'm into the self-manifestation of, like, an artist figuring out how to get into the place they want to be through whatever means they need to get there, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, what can we do for you? We have like administration, which is part of the deal. Like, take care of that. We have relationships, try to keep those alive. Distribution.
What's in the administration? Like what?
I mean, just collecting pennies, right? Like that's a lot of the business. You can outsource it. You can sign up online and get that done. And I think that's totally fine too. But
collecting publishing, making sure people are getting their money where.
If someone says, "Hey, I want to use Matthew's song in a video," are the people who are tasked with that discussion up to date on the current value of that license?
Yep.
Because I could say yes and then get a bad deal, but the people I work with are challenged to get the best deal for the artist.
Yep.
That's what a label in my mind does. We're optimizing every interaction that the artist's music has with the public.
And as an independent, you really truly have good intentions.
Yeah, I try to get away from the morality of it because it also gets like a little, like we have a 50-50 deal. Yeah. We're a partner with the artist, right? Yeah. So it's like there's no.
You're upfront.
If you win, we win. If you win, we win. Like it's not that baroque. It's just like it is. So that's the nice thing about indies is like it's a mutual gain, an ideal situation. But an artist can not have to give up any percentage and go as far as they want to go without needing one now.
Yeah. Radiohead
obviously is used a lot. They were major. They were self-released. They're back on Excel, probably because they don't want to do a lot of the nonsense.
Yeah.
Excel's a really great.
It's a lot of work.
It is. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work
to do it well, but you don't have to, and that's what's cool. So a good label should make your job as an artist easier. It should help you solve problems. Hey, I need to find a director in California. Going to be there. How do we troubleshoot? How do we promote? How do we make sure your YouTube is optimized? Like the boring stuff, right?
Boring stuff, but it's actually really interesting to hear it directly from you, because it does help get a good sense of what you think is important.
I think it's important. And also, if you want it, and you and I have started together, so we have that closeness, I don't expect it from all
I'm almost interviewing you from, like, I have to do a little bit of an out-of-body experience, because there are answers that I know.
We have a creative dialogue, too, where as an A&R person, sometimes I'm an A&R person. In our relationship, sometimes I am. Sometimes you're just like, this is the record, and you don't need it, but like we also have a dialogue on how to make things better.
Yeah.
And so that's another aspect of a good label.
You helped me put my albums together still.
Yeah.
To this day, you're the first person aside from Jen, you're one of the first people that hears my music.
But I know I don't expect that. And it's because you and I we're friends first and all these things, But that's a good label can do some of those things well. It depends. It's eye of the beholder type stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just a tool. A label is a tool that you can use. And I think the industry's forcing labels to be better, which they need to. Everybody has to be better. Agents have to be better. Everyone has to play up.
Yeah.
Which is what I think that's good pressure.
Yeah. I guess I would love to talk about merchandising, branding, collabs with big other brands. When did you, I guess, realize how important product would be for your label, for Ghostly, aside from great T-shirts or band merch? It seemed like obviously the physical product, the release, the vinyl, the jackets, were always very important. What could be stemming from just your art history, your love for look and feel. But when did it become apparent that the Ghostly store and the stuff that you could sell, and then jump forward to collaborations with brands like Warby Parker, recently Harry's, Vans, shoes. You know, there's been a lot of really big moments, Timex, that now Ghostly is becoming more of a brand partner. So it's your curatorial expertise now going into physical products like watches and shoes.
Yeah.
What's up with there? Like
I think it's misconstrued sometimes. I've gotten different feedback. Sometimes people go, this tweet happens every time we do a thing.
Okay.
Like for 20 years since the beginning. Oh, it's good you're doing merch because records don't sell. And it's like, no. It's like, A, this merch does not make enough money to float the whole team. B, it's an insult because it sounds like a defensive play, which it's not. It's it's a romantic. It's a communication device.
You love pop culture.
Yeah, I like as you know, I love taking an object that's like banal and regular as a razor and how do you add something to it?
Yeah.
It's just like, and I think some people like that stuff and some people don't. And then it's never more important than the music.
But you wouldn't work with Gillette.
I don't know. Maybe we would.
Maybe
I don't
we would.
know.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd say back to
say that.
it's like who makes something cool, who's down to collaborate.
That's what I'm saying. Is Harry's is kind of like
they're the Ghostly
it's a
of
version
razors.
of an artist.
Yeah, it's
like on the street that you're like, I want to work with that other
exactly.
thing.
I want to see what they know. I want to learn. Want to share what we know. But the Ghostly brand's always been like the fifth Beatle, in my mind.
I like that.
It's like the brand is like an artist, right?
Yeah.
And it manifests through collaboration and cool stuff. Because I'm not going to force, sometimes you've been a good sport and I've been a part of a lot of the campaigns because you're good on camera and fun to work with. But
I love being a guinea pig too. So.
Yeah, but and we have fun with it. And I don't feel bad about asking you to be part of stuff and whatever. It's not, I never would, the music's always the front. But
yes.
A lot of people have discovered Ghostly through Adult Swim or our iPhone app. Or even like free wallpapers we have on our website. You know, it's like, so I think it's not limiting because the song is like obviously the gem. It's like everything. I think
I say song rules everything.
Yeah.
Whether you're on SoundCloud,
right?
You know, as an independent, lonely, artist in a dorm room,
right?
If you put a great song, out there. It might go viral.
It might, but you have better chances if people know to look for the song.
Yes,
and I think that's what I always try to find.
And labels know what to help you do once that thing does go viral, if you want to. But I'm not trying to get back into that debate. Yeah. But I do, like you said, I think the music is always king and queen. The music rules the roost, and
if the music wasn't good, none of it would hold up. All this crap wouldn't be fair. It would just be stuff. And that's how I feel about it. It's like we've earned the right to play in other sandboxes. And it's interesting, and people get more. People have you get to talk to journalists who do watches, and they're super passionate about watches, like more than I'll ever be.
Yeah.
And they're talking about it with such care, but that's awesome. Like I get to be a fan. I get to look over the fence at their world and be a participant without having to leave our yard. Totally. So I just look at it as it's creative exploration.
Do you learn like working with somebody like Warby Parker or Vans? Are you also inadvertently or just outright, like, are you trying to learn how do they make shoes? Like, how is this process going to affect maybe the way that I put out a record? Or
I wish it were that deep because but it's also like I'm never going to make shoes.
Yeah.
Like I just don't. That's not like that's a. But they're never going to make records.
Do you see other systems at play that you're like, oh, like
I see how certain companies and certain leaders create value through store, like Vans is a great example, right? It's a shoe. It's a very basic, replicatable shoe. You and I could make a Vans ripoff and sell it for less. Doesn't matter because Vans is tied up in the culture of American sport and in music.
Yeah,
it's
skating,
skate,
surfing,
surf, rock. We have 8 principles on our website that I just put up, just kind of forced myself because I didn't want to do a mission statement because they get kind of like gooey, like. We challenge to be the best. Like these are like subjective things. So it's like the principles are like attitudes, and most of them are about not playing within the rules of your industry.
Okay.
So it's like, yes, there are rules, like you have, and there's ethics. I believe in ethics, but I don't want to be as like someone else. I want to be our thing, which is, I think that's how musicians feel,
Yeah.
So it's just trying to, how do you have a voice in a world that's continually flattened, in a lot of ways.
And it seems like you've figured out ways to give other people voices as well.
That's how it should be. Yeah.
How do you have the voice that allows others to have a loud voice as well?
Good labels and good managers and good publicists and good universities create opportunities. Yeah.
What's next? What do you want to accomplish that you haven't? I like earlier we talked about there is no end. So I'm not asking you to really know even, but are there any avenues that you'd really like to explore that maybe you haven't yet? Without giving away any secrets?
No, it's not. There's no like secret plan. I mean, the original mission statement from Cousins was like music, clothing, and magazine. That was like the goals. So I feel like clothing we've gotten better at with collaborations. It's more fun expression. Magazine, I think, means something different now. It means like editorial, which I think we're learning how to do.
Yeah.
Like, telling stories. It could be podcasts, it could be documentaries. It could just be the blog. I think obviously the tech aspects is continually getting exciting, and like there's new mediums for music that are coming. I'm also interested in just the vessel of the label. Like you said, new voices. Who's A&R? Who's going to lead the A&R for the next 20 years? Who's going to lead creative direction? True institutions like the U. Yeah. Are a continuation of good principles and practices. Yeah. And that's where my mind goes now, because I'm not going to be ever, you and I are never going to meet again at age 18, 19. That's a pivotal moment, but system building, design building, music thinking is like, how does this engine create? And what you're doing with your class is why it's so awesome, is in this program is instigating the next generation.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you've done the Ghostly panels. You've been doing Ghostly meetups.
Yep. The Ghostly Knowledge Share. We did in person, which you've been great at being part of. Getting artists and young people together. During lockdown, we did a series of Zoom ones, which my colleague Amanda has produced and done. They've been really awesome. Vans helped out. Twitch was a great platform. We're also platform agnostic. We're medium agnostic. Yeah. So whatever the thing is that's available, use the thing. Yeah. It's the light post with the flyer. It's Facebook. It's whatever's next. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just like, are you communicating? Are you adding value? Are you creating whatever creating means for you? Yeah. That as long as those are happening, then I feel good.
It's amazing to hear it so succinct, and it's music is life. Music as philosophy. Music as a cultural, not a cultural force, but a cultural contribution. I see it, and
I think what you and I didn't have that you have in this class and your students is a bigger conversation around equity, parity, authorship, thinking beyond the Western male canon, thinking about the inequality of the music industry, thinking about inequality of entertainment. I think there's a lot of, while we have to also make great art, we also are readjusting and resetting the stage so that this is an industry writ large that's something to be proud of. Yeah. And I think, if I'm honest, a lot of the music industry history is not something necessarily to be proud of. The art is the pride. Yeah. But there's a lot of equitable changes that are coming through that your students and people watching this hopefully are, and hopefully we're instigating too. That's going to be the championship moment of this era. I think is not just the best new song. It's that an artist that wouldn't have had a chance has a chance, is compensated fairly. Maybe blockchain technology allows the transparency or equity of splits, or that's going to be the hit song. Yeah. That like would never have happened before. Yeah. And I want to be part of that moment.
That's so good to hear. I wouldn't have expected it any other way, but it's great to hear your take on that as well. We forget that, or let's not forget that it wasn't that long ago that someone like Muddy Waters was recording for the first time in a studio, only to be led to believe that he had his first record made, and then they slapped another person's sticker on the vinyl. And
it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
In the course of recorded history, that's a minute ago.
Totally.
So so I think we're at an interesting juncture. We have all this information. We have a lot of history.
Yeah.
We have a lot ahead of us, and we should acknowledge that these things happened.
Yeah.
We should acknowledge that these are complex stories, but not let that stop us from getting it right next time.
Yeah.
The fact that we have these stories is like you said, music is so powerful. These voices can't be subjugated. They just keep reoccurring, whether it's Muddy Waters or Arthur Russell, or people come back to life through the work.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt. I've been working with you for over 20 years, but there's no doubt that I think whether or not I just met you for the first time, that you've created a very, very important place for music to exist in all these different formats that we've talked about. And thank you for doing that.
It wouldn't have happened without you. So
yeah, well,
that's the thing too. It's like,
and I wouldn't have happened without you.
Music, we create each other's dreams through this stuff. It's pretty powerful. It's a privilege, right?
Absolutely.
Music is a privilege to be part of, and it's hard. That's why it's so hard too. It's very hard to be a musician. It's very hard. People don't realize that. You have to work twice as hard.
Yeah. I
think, to be good in performing arts, because it's so in demand and so beloved.
Yeah.
To be great, and I think people. I think the conversation around mental health and other things, and monetization and self-sustain, self-care and stuff. This is all a reckoning where it's like, okay, this is a very hard job. Let's treat it as such. To be in the office or on the road in music asks a lot of people. It is a privilege, but there's a better system coming.
Yep. I've always said, and I'll end on my final quote, being a musician is the hardest, easy job on the planet.
Brilliant.
So
yeah.
I think that's pretty much what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it not acknowledges that it's a joy, but it also acknowledges it's...
The moment on stage, the moment sharing your love of music with other people, the moment when you get to put out a new shirt with an artist that I mean it's as simple as that. Sometimes when you know that an idea that you helped curate and come to life is out there, that's amazing.
It's magic.
There's no pure joy that can replace that. But the emails back and forth setting it up, or the long conversations with a designer about the shape of the letter G, it's like there's a lot that is not fun, and it's part of the
making
process
it look easy
that gets you to those moments.
Yeah.
The long flights to overseas to play for something that might not pay as much as you'd like,
or not even happen.
I
was at an airport coming to Detroit yesterday with an artist that you and I work with, and had just gotten news that his gig was canceled.
Yeah,
that he put months of time into.
Yeah.
And those injuries stack up.
And that's the hard part.
Right. And people don't see, they only see the thing on stage. They don't see. So I think having a self-resolve and knowing a love for taking care of yourself and your people is
staying healthy,
which is super hard. And it's hard to learn that.
Pay attention, but don't let attention pay.
Wow.
For everything that you do.
Yeah. Someone said, keep your eyes on your own paper.
Let's do quotes.
Yeah. Not like that. I just check out the world, check out the room, but
pay attention.
All you have control over is your work.
And
yeah.
Where'd you get these shoes?
Yeah. This is a plug.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thanks everyone.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Karen.
I can't wait to talk with you later, and the students as well,
awesome.
about everything we talked about.
Same.
All right. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.